Hello and welcome. In my previous video, the travelling chunk loader, I was asked to make a tutorial. So here we go. Because the nether portals are going to be quite close on the nether side, we need to make sure they're placed correctly. Basically exactly at the multiple of 8 uh, distance dividing. So this one's at negative 129, negative 77. If we go through, you can see we're at about negative 3, negative 11. So we do need to move it ever so slightly over this direction. No, not that direction. That's correct. It needs to be negative 16 and then negative 10. So this is about where we're going to move it to. We're also going to make it a little bit bigger. So just bear with me while I dig out some blocks. So here we have our moved nether portal. As we can see, I've moved it a bit further away from that one. And when I stand over here, I can see I've got my negative 16, negative 10 marker. But I've also made it a little bit wider, and that's simply because I'm going to have 2 lines of rail coming through this. And I like to keep a gap in between them, because they need a gap as the travelling chunker goes along. This is going to be a bi-directional one, so rails are going to go in both directions. So let's light this up and make sure that this is now exactly matched with the one in the overworld. So we go through, we have come out here. If we go back again, we should come to our new nether portal and not the one previously to it. So far, so good. We'll also make this one bigger. So we'll just do that now. I'm just going to break it. And light it again. So that when we come in on the left side, on the left side of this one, and as we come into the middle, right, right. So that's what we want. Now on this side, we are going to have to make a tunnel 3 wide, and that's for the rails. It's going to have to be 3 wide, but it's also going to have to come down a little bit. So we're going to want to come down 1, 2, 3, travel on the right, so that's going to be the in and the out. We also need to have a look at the chunk borders. There's our first chunk border, so that's good. Within the chunk border on this side, got a little bit of leeway, which is also good. So not right up against the chunk border, that would make it a bit difficult. Not crossing the chunk border on the portal, that's also good. So far so good. So the tracks are going to be on this level, but we are also going to need, and I'm going to start putting this in as well, we're also going to need a little bit beneath the track. So the track's one on this level, and then we're going to have some redstone on this level. So we're going to dig out a 3x3, well, 3 tunnel deep and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high along this whole length. The reason it's 5 high is we will have bumps up in the track and they need to come down. You can probably do 4 high, but I'm going to go 5 high the full length. So I'll be back in a little bit after digging this towards my nether portal. So I finished building the tunnel 3 wide and all the way to the other end. So if we fly to the other end, you can see that we have our other nether portal all the way over here. This is the one we're going to be going to. You can see the chunk borders coming along as we go through. So that's our destination portal. More or less the same position. We'll just grab a flint and steel. We'll just connect it to our portal over in the swamp, which is where our destination is. So the other thing we need to do in the nether, minecarts can't go through a nether portal twice in quick successions. So we're just going to add a little pause signal at the end. So the pause signal basically is just going to hold the minecart a little bit longer before it goes through the portal, just to make sure it's been in the nether long enough so that it will actually transport through the portal. So for that, I'm going to get some blocks. Some blocks up to build over. Some of these I want a target block, some torches, and we'll grab some of these. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to have a solid block here because we need to be able to detect that it's gone back through the nether. We're going to use this signal on a piece of redstone wire coming back this way so that when that is triggered, we know that our minecart's gone through the nether. We're going to come over 1, 2, 3, and then come up. On here we're going to put a detector rail. That's just to detect where it's come up to the pause gate. And finally I'm going to need an actual gate. This is going to be what stops the minecart from traveling onwards. So I'm just going to put some blocks here and a target block here. Just replace this with the slab. I'm going to put a torch against that and a dust here. So this means when this detector rail hits, it's going to close that gate, which is what we want. When a minecart gets here, we're just going to pause for a little bit. I'm just going to dig out this way a little bit. Hopefully we don't hit any lava. We're just going to put a fade signal. So I've got one there. I'm just going to replace these blocks with slabs just to make it a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. So we've got our dust there. It connects to the target block. We're also going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and dust at the end. So what we have here is a little system where if we grab ourselves a minecart, it's our minecart's coming along. The first thing it's going to do is shut that gate. And the gate's going to stay shut for a little while until it opens. That fade signal is probably a little bit long, but really, how long it is really depends. And then you can see it went through the portal and we got a pulse at the end to say, hey, this has gone through, so we can do our next minecart. So that'll do for there. Just going to continue our track all the way to the chunk border. On the other side of the chunk border, we're going to want to have a weight, which means we're going to have a gate here. This is so that if there's anything sitting on this track, we want the minecarts in the following chunk just to wait at the chunk border, not come just through until that minecart is released. So I'm just going to continue that over. And then finally, I'm just going to put a torch here to power the rail. So that's our pause signal done. And we're just going to continue this way a little bit. So now we need to put some chunk weighting systems so that minecarts don't collapse on each other. If we've got a lot of minecarts here, we just want them to weigh one chunk each. So let's do that. So we've got our pause signal. Let's work on our chunk signal. So we just want to do this so that there's only one minecart in the chunk at a time. And this is just going to stop them bunching up on each other. But it also give us what we need to detect when the minecarts are coming through the system and keep the chunks loaded. So the second one we want a rail like that. Then I'm going to put a dropper here facing this way. And then a dropper facing into it in the other direction. And down here I am going to have, just do it that way, a comparator facing out. And that's going to go into a block. And this is going to be what detects if a minecart's traveling on here. So if it goes along the one, it's going to move the item from that dropper to this dropper, which will then in turn close our signal. So the only other thing that we should expect is to have a rail here and then bring the rail along this way. And then somewhere about in the middle, I'm just going to power the rails. The next thing we need to do is when this is triggered, we're going to run a signal back this way. So we just need to make sure that that is a solid block. So just do that. Now when that's triggered, we know that it's come through into this signal and we can release the one behind it. But we're going to have a gate here, here. So basically, come over this way. Minecart's going to pause here while the gate's shut, which it will be if that is triggered, and it won't be triggered until the item comes back off this one and move the item back over here, in which case the gate is open. I'm just going to leave it in the open position for now. But the next thing we need to do is we need to make it so that when it's released from this one, so when it gets out of this chunk, we want to open this gate over here. Something's wrong. Oh right, I also need to do a chunk break here. So we need to do the same system over here, but it's basically the same thing. So we have a torch with a compounder facing in here, and then we'll do the dropper thing. So dropper, and we'll just put a shovel in there and a detector out. So again, if minecart comes through here, it triggers that. This moves the shovel over here, closing the gate, meaning that this is now locked and will not be unlocked until a signal comes from this over here. Let's run that signal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And we're doing well. So I'm just going to put a block here, a block here, and there. So instead of running that down there, I'm just going to run it over here. And I'm just going to make sure that on this side I've got solid blocks. So now what will happen is if it hits this detector rail, it will not power the rail, but it will pause here and will not send a signal here until it gets to that detector rail, meaning it's going out through the portal. And that will then cause this gate to open, letting another minecart through if there is one waiting. Again, detector rail there also needs to run a signal this way to the next one. So, is that in the right place? 1, 2, that is in the right place. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bring it over this way. We'll just check the signal strength in a second. So, solid block. Get rid of that one. And I am just going to power that strongly for a second just to check that it reaches all the way over here. So if I press F3, you can see I've got one signal strength, which means it's strong enough. I can get rid of that again. So now when it goes over this one, e.g. that gate's been released and there's no minecart waiting here anymore. It will now signal this one to release, allowing a minecart to go here. So we can sort of see the system in action already. So if we get a minecart and we test it, we can see that that closes, or it should have closed the first gate. Why did that not close the first gate? Do you have a minecart in you? No. So we made a couple of little fix-ups here. We had this detector rail one too far this way, so we just want it on a solid block here. I'm just going to double check that I have indeed got a shovel in here. And over here, we're just going to check that there's a shovel in there. And nothing in here. Nothing here. Gates are open. We've got a block above this torch, which we missed earlier, so that can now power the gate. So let's give this a test. So I get my minecart. What we should see is the minecart's pausing on us. So that gate shuts until that one clears, and now it moves, and then it pauses. Then it waits here while that pause signal waits. And then that's going to let go in any second now. There it goes through the portal. And that one's released and it pauses. So now we have our pause signal, but we also need to make sure that while the minecart's here, the chunk remains loaded. So let's turn this portal into a chunk loader. We're going to come over another 2 blocks. We'll just break that portal. But we'll do just make sure we get on the same on the other side. So we're just going to bring it this way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we need some sand and some cactus. Sand, cactus. I'm just going to put a sand block here and here. And I'm just going to remake my portal. sides, and we're just going to make sure that we're lined up with the sand block where we want to be for the chunk loader. So let me just get rid of that and that. Line that up again, so if we come over here. See, I did get that wrong. I'll put this the wrong way. Let's go this way a little bit. And we'll put our sand here, and here, cactus, cactus. And I'll just return that back to where it was. Pop that up again. So now if I come where I want to have my chunk loader, I should hit a cactus. And there it is. So that's what we're aiming for on this side. So let's make the chunk loader aspect of it. So I'm going to need some hoppers, hopper-like things. So a hopper, minecart, a dispenser, torch. I'm also going to need some chain. This is more of a convenience. Oops, didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. We'll light it later. So I'm just going to put a chain block here. And under here, I'm just going to put my dispenser facing up. Hopper into it. The reason the chain is there is because we are going to have some blocks on here, so we're going to have a block there. I'm going to get my detector rail, and I'm going to put some minecart hoppers in there. I'm going to put a second one to gently bounce it into place. The chain just stops it going too far. So I can now block that, and I can put a torch here. And if we light this up again, and I put some minecarts with hoppers in here, or any other minecarts, what should happen is the minecarts go through the portal, and then they come back repeatedly, and this will happen basically forever. So the next thing we want to do is, if that gate is closed, we don't want to signal this way, so off torch. No, we do want to signal this way, so we want to detect if that's on, and if it is on, basically turn that off. Okay, so let's create a signal for that. So at the moment, gate's open, there's nothing waiting, that means we want to turn that off, which means we need to run a signal into the side of it. So let's start by, got a torch there, so that'll do. So grab a repeater, one repeater, then I can basically want to put repeater there, and then I can go, I'm just going to put some slabs down here so we can see what we're doing a little bit more easily. I'm just going to get some dust. Oh, not what I wanted. Because I've got that torch there, my bad. Bad again. Oh, that's why that block's being powered by there. Let's just put another block there. And now I should be able to put a block here. There we go. So on from there, run around. And that's just gonna turn off that. Since we are coming around the long way, I can just do that. So I'll just get my slab blocks there again to make the signal a little bit more visible. So if there's a minecart waiting here, that chunk loader should be on, otherwise it'll be off. We can test that again. So we'll put a couple of minecarts all the way back here. So 1, 2, 3. We can see that while there is a minecart here waiting, that chunk loader should be running. And then when it's released, it should stop for a second until the next minecart turns up and starts the chunk loader again. and then we should do the same thing again. And then when that last minecart goes, the chunk loader should remain off. So we're basically taking our pull signal and we're just taking the signal out and run it directly over here. Might be better ways of running it, but this works, and it works well enough. Okay, so that's that chunk loader in the exit chunk, but we're also going to need a chunk loader in this chunk. So for that, we're going to take a signal out of this one. So again, if there's something waiting there, e.g. that gate is shut, or rather it's waiting here and hasn't gone over that one. So if this is active, we have a minecart potentially waiting here because it's gone over that gate, that torch will turn on and we're going to use that to run our chunk loader in this block. So I'm just going to do that. This is where we're going to run our signal from. And I'm running it down the middle because I am going to have the same thing in the other direction. So for this, I'm going to have to come up a little bit. We'll come over a little bit first. Say somewhere about the middle of the block. That'll do. I'll just say here. This can be our signal for our chunk loader in the other direction. So I'm just going to clear some up here. So we want this, if that signal or the other signal is on, we're going to release a torch. So remember, on means don't run the signal, so we now have our torch on. So our dispenser will sit up here. Facing up. And this is going to be our chunk loader for our portal, so our portal now needs to be up here. Now you can make this, and we are going to actually do that. We're going to make it a little bit wider. So let's say, which side? A bit closer that way, so we'll put it over here. So we're going to say that's our portal, but I'm also going to come just a little bit further this way. The reason I'm doing this is so that I can also use this as a personal transportation network. So I'm just going to do that. So that can be the portal side, and then I'm going to come this side as well. Clear that out a little bit. The reason I'm doing that is I can clear all the way back to our main portal and have some steps up, and then basically use this side. So let's do that. So we've just started building the platform up to over here, and I just want to highlight one of the mistakes I made in my videos just now. And I'm going to talk about it in case you make the same mistake in yours. So it's also not just important that these portals are placed in the right places, but they're facing the right way. So at the moment I'm facing towards the east and west. Unfortunately with this portal, as I went through, I am now facing towards the south. So it is important that this is also east-west, so I'm just going to have to rotate it around, and I'll do that quite quickly. So we're going to go, going to have basically the same position, but 1, 2, 3. How wide was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up. 3, 4, 5. Just going to rotate it around. And now what should happen if I come from the stairway and I go through the portal and I turn around and I come back, I should end up on the stairway again. So if I go through where my chunk loader is, this is where my chunk loader is, so this is where I need my sand and my cacti. Here we are again, we're just going to finish building this chunk loader now that we have a nice path. This path isn't really needed, it's just if you're going to build a lot of nether portals along the path, you might as well have a way of walking it as well, just in case you're ever stuck between the two places and you want to get back up. So let's finish building this chunk loader here. So torch over there. Then we need our hopper minecart and our detector rail, as well as our chain. So I am just going to my chain here. I can still walk over the top of that. That's not going to be a problem. And then our hopper needs to be here. And then we put out a tech trowel, load our hopper minecart in, and get the other one to just push it gently into place. Get rid of that. Make sure that torch is there. Doesn't have to be hopper minecarts in there, we'll just put some regular minecarts in this time. 1, 2, 3. So we now have a deactivated chunk loader working here. So this is basically one side of the system to deal with having a minecart going this way. So in the other direction, it's very similar. We're going to have a path, and it's going to go on this side. The difference is, though, instead of pausing for the chunk in that direction, we're just going to pause in the other direction. So I'm just going to build this all the way over to here. Get rid of those? Yes, we can get rid of those. Now, just over here, I am going to come down a couple blocks. And that's just simply because I don't want the minecarts to head back that way. So we'll come through here, that should be enough to power all the way to there. Now we do need it to wait here. So I'm just going to, just before the chunk loader, have it come up and over. And I'm going to have my gate on the other side. But in this case, we're going in this direction now. So we're just basically repeating the pattern we had over here, but back in the other direction. So that means go about detect well. Come over there. So 1, 2 of the chunk border, detect well. That means this is going to be our droppers. So dropper facing this way, facing that way. I'm going to put a shovel in there. Doesn't really have to be a shovel, it can actually be any item. Shovels are just my chosen item. So we're going to have a block here, block there, block there. We're going to need to run some redstone. So the redstone is going to come here. I'm going to show you something in a second. So the detector rail is 2 off the chunk, but over the chunk. So I'm just going to come all the way over here and do that. So the redstone is going to run from over here, 2 off the chunk, and then over the chunk. Now I'm just going to come back here in a second. We just need to make sure that this line doesn't head up there. So we're just going to complete these blocks. So now that the line that runs the signal this way will not jump over to there, so this signal will not jump over here and affect that one. And we're just going to do the same thing over here. Make those into 4 blocks. This basically means that the signals can run next to each other, so that when we have a detector rail here, not there, there. When that detector rail powers, the signal will skip this circuit entirely, come over here and hit that, moving our little dropper back again. So then, we just need to power that gate. So we can have that, and that, and our comparator, and our torch into our other gate. So now we have an open gate, and if I stick a minecart and give it a little push, you should still see the minecart do that hole, close the gate for a little bit, and then set another one. We'll just test that, pushed, waiting for it to exit the chunk, and I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? I didn't make that a full block. We're just going to do that test again. I'll just put the minecart there just to send that one along, and we'll just do that test again. a chunk, and then it goes. And that's what we want to see. Now this also means that we now have a signal over here we can take. So if I grab that torch there, put a full block above it, and one out from over here, and then get my redstone dust along here. And this means that if a minecart is going in this direction, you should start running that chunk loader until it's clear of the track, and then the chunk loader will stop again. So that's both our directions for the mine carts in this chunk here, with the chunk loader in this chunk. And then we have our exit chunk over here. And the minecart will just come in here, and by coming into this, it'll load both this chunk for entity processing, and then yes, that'll load entity processing this chunk and that chunk, so it'll come over here, immediately come through here, hit that signal there, which will start that chunk loader going, which will keep it ready in this one until it's ready to leave. The only other thing that we need to do is this needs to be a block like that, because we're going to have a gate on the other side here, just like we did there. I can get that correctly. There. So we're going to have another one of these chunk signals over here. So this chunk here, this is now complete. This chunk is now complete, and it's going to be the same chunk here as it is on the other end. So I'm just going to build the rest of this entire system off camera, and then we can test out the entire thing. So I'm just setting up the portals for each of the chunks that are, one chunk apart in the Nether. And I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut rather than working out the exact coordinates. So here's, I'll already set them all up individually. Just let them all up. And then if I come through the first one, for example, and I set that up with the thing, I can actually use the chunk border. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, should be 8, but it's close enough. It should take me to the second one. If I turn around, I can see that it has indeed taken me to the second one. So if I just skip 8 chunks along and put them in roughly the same position, it should be mostly correct. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to put our next one here. Just do it 3 wide. 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. We're just going to check that we actually come out where we intend to before we build the rest of it. So I'll just come in here. So that's the third one along. Indeed, we're coming here. That's the side of our chunk loader. So we can put our cactus in. You just sort of keep doing that along. It's just a slightly simpler way of just making sure that we light all of these up correctly. So now we've finished setting up these nether portals, and I've made each of them into a chunk loader. I've checked that on the other side the portals are lined up so that each portal is lined up with exactly one other portal on the overworld, so that the minecarts return in the chunk loader. Now let's make this all do something useful. So through this side we have our swamp. In our swamp I've just got a very simple minecart loader. So minecarts will come in here. This is one of those block signals I showed you before, just a little bit smaller, so that if there's a minecart waiting here and it has moved on, the next minecart will just wait there till it be ready. This is just allows the hover minecart to sit directly under the chest, be loaded very quickly. Once it is, the gate will open, it'll go on its way. Also, while there is a minecart sitting in this section waiting, it will then release this chunk loader, so that even if there's no minecarts on the nether side, if there's a minecart waiting loading here, it will hold that portal as a chunk loader until the minecarts finish loading, and then send the minecart through. So here we are back at spawn. So we're going to send a couple of minecarts off to our swamp 1500 blocks away to collect some popicles. 1, 2. So this should take about a minute and a half, maybe a minute, because both minecarts need to wait before they get to the swamp just to make sure they've been in the nether long enough, and then they'll wait to load, and then when they're coming back they'll also wait just before this portal, again to make sure they can teleport through. So while that's happening, I'm just going to talk about some of the mistakes that can be made. If you're building this, these are some of the things to watch out for. First thing is to make sure that your detector rails are always above a full block. Also, with the redstone lines, it's important to make sure that the line comes all the way under the detector rail rather than fall short. Another thing that can go wrong is when you're trying to line up into setting this dropper back. If you don't do the redstone correctly, it won't actually connect to that block, so just make sure the redstone leads into the block next to the dropper. Another thing that can go wrong is sometimes you might accidentally put the detector rail on top of the dropper instead of the block next to it, so it needs to be there instead. And this is just to make sure that it only powers one of the droppers instead of both. Again, make sure that is a full block. So that covers most of the things that can go wrong. Other than that, it's pretty obvious. Make sure that you watch where your grid boundaries are, so that the minecart's waiting before the grid boundary and not anywhere after. So I'll just get a gate and show that. Should be waiting before the grid boundary, so you should have a downward rail on one side and the gate on the other. And we see that we've gotten one of our minecarts back already, and the chunk loader's running, so there's the other minecart. And there's our items from the swamp. So that's the traveling chunk loader tutorial. I've tried to cover some of the things that can go wrong, tried to explain how it's built and show it step by step. Hopefully, for the people who are interested in this design, this helps them to build it correctly. Thank you for watching.